Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Just like to say a big welcome, and we really appreciate you taking the time out to come along to this webinar. So my name is Angela Davies, and presenting with me is Dion Watson. And in today's webinar, we're going to be showcasing our forensic awareness app, Crime Scene Assistant. There will be a Q&A session at the end, but if you have any questions or comments as we go, please just pop them in the chat and we will get to them, no problem at all. So for those of you that don't know us or haven't been to one of our previous webinars, we launched Crime Scene Assistant on the 12th of June 2020. And since then, things have progressed really well. Today, what we want to do is to talk to you specifically about the content in the police section of our app, as well as discussing some of the benefits and looking at a real world application. In addition, we also want to share with you our plans moving forward and the different ways in which you can access the app, because there are a couple of different ways. But before we get going and get into the nitty gritty, and again, for those of you that don't know us, what I want to do is just give you a brief overview of our background and how we came to be. So Dion and I started our forensic careers in 2005 at Teesside University, where we were studying crime scene science. After graduation, we went on to work for Northumbria Police as crime scene investigators, as you can see from these fetching images there of us both at scenes in action. In our time with the police, we attended all crime scene types, from volume to major category crime. We gained a wealth of experience in the field, and it was here really that we first started to encounter issues around crime scene preservation. In 2012, we established our first business, CSI Training and Events Limited, in which we deliver face-to-face training and events, both nationally and internationally, to a multitude of audiences and across a number of different sectors. And that includes delivering forensic awareness training to frontline responders. In addition, we're also disaster response consultants and have worked on a number of airline disasters. So we've got quite a bit of experience, and CSI Training Events is actually an award-winning business. And we have also received acknowledgements for the work carried out on one of the air disasters. So as you could have just seen there from the last two pictures. So we are extremely proud of everything that we've achieved to date, but we recognise that as a small business, our face-to-face capability was limited, and we really wanted our forensic awareness training to be much farther reaching. So on the 4th of February 2019, we launched Crime Scene Assist, CSI's digital sister company, and thereafter, as stated earlier, on the 12th of June 2020, we launched the first digital product, Crime Scene Assistant, the app. So what is it? Crime Scene Assistant basically is a forensic awareness app that is designed to be used as a scene aid memoir and learning tool. It's easy to navigate and can be either used on a scene as a quick reference guide and when appropriate, or as a learning and revision guide to be used at any time. It also can and has been utilised as a training tool and has been used by a number of academic institutions to also develop training content and workshop materials. It's effectively being developed for anyone who has the potential to be the first in attendance at a crime scene, so responders such as police officers, paramedics, fire officers, security officers, and it's really useful for students of these services and crime scene and forensic investigation students. It's also a really useful tool for those recording crime and giving advice to victims, so for people in the call centres who are taking 999 calls, for instance. The reason that we developed the app was because forensic evidence recovery starts at the crime scene. There's only one opportunity to recover evidence, and if it is inappropriately handled, recorded, or recovered, then it's lost and the situation can't be rectified. Actions at the initial stages of the process can impact the investigation as a whole and can make or break an investigation. And we feel that this is quite a lot of pressure to put on people without actually giving them adequate training or information. So our idea is that in arming all frontline responders with some basic knowledge with how to approach and preserve a crime scene, this will in turn help scene investigators to maximise forensic evidence recovery, which will aid the overall investigation of crime and therefore hopefully the criminal justice outcome. What we want to do is note here that we're not trying to turn all police personnel or first responders into crime scene investigators, and we fully acknowledge that they, all have their own remit when attending an incident, and that preservation of life must always come first, and evidence preservation or recovery second to that. Yet, at our core, we also truly believe that anyone whose actions impact an investigation, they really need to be able to maintain crime scene integrity, and that they have a responsibility when working within a scene to ensure that it's as disrupted as little as possible and that evidence is preserved to the highest standard possible. As you can see from the front screen here, we have tailored information to each individual service. We believe that raising forensic awareness amongst the other responders will in turn help the police with their investigations and make interactions between services more effective and more efficient. Within the policing section, we go into more detail and we look at things such as considering the approach, preservation, and where necessary, recovery of evidence in both volume and major category crime scenes. The tailored information has come from our experience of working in the police and also working on air disasters and from the face-to-face training that we've already delivered. But rather than talking too much more about it, what I'm going to do is hand over to Dion, who's going to take you through a demonstration of the content and provide an example of its application as seen here.
I'm demonstrating the app being used on an Apple device today. There will be some small differences on the Android, such as the location of the back arrow keys, but everything else will pretty much look and function the same as you'll see here today. So when you open the app for the first time, a disclaimer will pop up, and you will need to read and agree to these terms before you can use the app. This only occurs on the first use, so once you've agreed to it, you won't see it again. But because I've used the app before, it hasn't popped up for me. If you do want to revisit the terms and conditions at any point, you can find them within the More section in the bottom right corner. So after agreeing to the disclaimer, the home page will be displayed. You will see here that we've broken the app down into 4 responder categories. Select police and you will go through to the process page. If you would like to know more about the functionality of the app, you can visit our YouTube channel where there's a video. But for now, I'm going to show you how this app becomes your personal crime scene assistant, reminding you of all the steps along the way. Imagine I've been called to the scene of a burglary. The first thing I need to think about is the approach, and this is the first step in the app. Whether I'm attending a volume or a major crime scene, the app provides me with a list of considerations for both. Because I'm dealing with a burglary today, I'm going to be using the volume crime prompts. As I approach the scene, I've parked my vehicle in a sensible location, and on making my way to the property, I'm already mentally assessing for risks and any potential evidence that I might see. I can see there's a dark item in the garden and some potential blood staining on the path, so I know that I have some visible evidence outside, but the app also reminds me to be conscious of the things that I might not be able to see, as you can see here. So now I'm conscious of those other items. I'm going to tick that box. So securing this scene and limiting access is going to be essential in preserving it and preventing contamination. Before progressing, I'm prompted to use minimum PPE to ensure that I protect what's in front of me and anything else that might become apparent. Because of the evidence on the path and just off it, it's likely that the offender has used this route either on entry or exit. Therefore, as specified in the app, I'm going to avoid this area and create a path to and from the property that was least likely to have been used by the offender. The front door is the only reasonable point of entry and exit to the property for me, but I'm going to be mindful of where I touch and where I put my feet, and I'm going to do my utmost to spend as little time in the area as possible, because the app is telling me that this is going to be a key place for the CSIs to recover potential evidence. On entering the premises, it becomes apparent that there's been a commotion and there's potentially a lot of evidence here. After approaching and assessing the scene, preservation or recovery is the next step, and therefore step 2 in the app. As you can see here, there are general things to think about regardless of whether I'm preserving or recovering evidence. The preservation section of the app gives me information for specific circumstances. In this incident, I have both indoor and outdoor elements with a point of entry and exit. So there are 3 sections that will be really useful to me. With regards to the indoor element, ideally I would just secure it and leave it for the CSI, but that's not possible here because the victim is home and they have pets. The app prompts me to be mindful of contamination and make sure that I give the victim good advice regarding avoidance of areas with potential evidence. If I believe, however, that evidence is at risk of becoming contaminated, the app recommends that I either cover or move it, and it also recommends how best to do this. The outdoor part of this scene may be the trickiest, as it's open to the elements. I need to make sure that I'm not going to lose evidence due to people, animals, or the weather. I've already spoken to the on-duty CSI and they can't attend for a couple of hours, and the weather is due to change, so I've got to deal with it. The potential blood cannot be moved, so the app is telling me the best thing I can do here is cover it with something, perhaps a plant pot, a bucket, or a plastic bag. But whatever I use, I need to think about contamination and make sure that the item is large enough to make sure that it doesn't touch the evidence itself. Regarding the glove, I can cover it or possibly move it indoors, but my fear is that it isn't going to be secure and it may be lost or contaminated. With all things considered, I think the best thing to do is recover it. In taking this decision, I'm going to ensure that I package it appropriately to make sure it maintains its integrity. Thankfully, the app has a laid out step-by-step process which helps me to choose the correct packaging. As I get closer to the glove, I see that it is wet, possibly with blood, so I'm going to check out biological evidence, wet items. It tells me that I can recover it safely in a tamper evidence bag. In step 2, the app is telling me that I must bring the bag to the item rather than the other way around. So I'm going to do this and gently pick it up by touching only the edges. I'm not sure about which details need to be completed, but I have instruction in step 3 about sealing and labelling. And in step 4, I have information regarding maintaining the continuity of the evidence, which may be important later when it comes to court. So much so that I'm going to make sure that I document all of my actions and ensure I'm covered when I come to write up my statement and give evidence in court. On checking the app, I see step 3, documentation, and a number of pertinent things that I haven't documented. Things such as the PPE that I was wearing at the time, and also the route that I'd taken through the scene. And this will help me, if I document all of these things, this will help me later on, and it will also help the investigation as a whole. So I know that I definitely need CSI attendance, and I've put a request in, but actually I've taken a number of actions that would be useful for the CSI to know. And after checking their app, there is quite a bit more detail that I could communicate to them, which would promote good teamwork. But it will also help to give the CSIs a good understanding of what has happened, which in turn will help them to make their job more efficient, and it will allow them to maximise forensic evidence recovery. I'm now happy that I've preserved this scene and the evidence to the best of my ability. I've given good advice to the victim. I've thoroughly documented all of my actions and I've fed this information into the forensic team. I'm happy that I can now leave this scene and leave it secure for the CSI arrival. It's important to note that we recognise it may not always be feasible to use the app at an incident due to circumstances. However, it can be used as a departmental training tool, a revision aid for individuals, an aid memoir when finishing up at a scene, or it can be used after attendance to help with notes, statements, and briefing information for others. Thank you for watching this demonstration. We hope you've enjoyed it.
Thank you, Dion. So in the demonstration there, a number of key points were looked at, and these are areas that we're aware that are real issues in terms of crime scene contamination. So for instance, things such as not following a common approach path or being mindful of the offender's footsteps, sometimes spending too long at a point of entry and exit and handling things in those areas, and also sometimes handling items and moving them without the correct PPE. If evidence is not secured or protected and lost due to interference, this causes a lot of problems in the knock-on effect of the investigations, and they are, like I say, issues that we've encountered that has resulted in the loss of forensic evidence. But as you can see, the app actually counters that, as it's filled with good advice, and it can also be used in multiple ways. It's a fantastic digital tool that's at the user's fingertips constantly, and there are many different benefits to using it. So there's a few up on the screen here. So it's easy to navigate and it's accessible offline. And the great thing about this is that it means it's resilient. So once it's downloaded, it doesn't actually need an internet connection to access the information. So it can be utilized at any time in all types of environments, which obviously we know is great for frontline responders. It's also a fantastic training tool that can supplement training or help create additional training content. And the beauty of utilizing the app as a training tool is that the trainee then has a constant record of what they've learned on their phones. We know that the police, for instance, have a lot to learn and a lot to remember, and forensics is just the tip of the iceberg for them, particularly in initial training. So having that information to hand when they walk away from the training as a constant reminder, surely it can only be a good thing. In an ideal world, and what we here at Crime Scene Assist are trying to promote, is embedding forensic awareness training into the initial training of all frontline responders, with the hope that it'll become second nature. So rather than it being something just additional, something else that you have to think about, the hope is that it'll become automatically integrated into practice. But we know we're not quite there yet, but we have to start somewhere. And we feel that this app is a great place to start because, like I say, it is a tool that's constantly at the fingertips of the user. In addition, the app is sustainable, as it can be and will be updated and maintained on a regular basis. But most importantly, I think, particularly for frontline responders, is the fact that it's cost effective. It's not going to break the bank, and it will add real value to staff training and improve the proper handling of crime scenes, basically from the word go. We know that budgets are tight and forces are moving to a more digital approach, and the app fits in line with that. And we also are aware of the police digital service looking to raise standards in policing, in helping drive innovation, reduce costs, and improve interoperability. And we feel that our app does this, particularly hitting point 3 in their strategy of enabling officers and staff through digital, ensuring they are equipped with the right knowledge, skills, and tools. And the app definitely does this again. So there are quite a few benefits there that we've addressed, and like I say, some on the screen there. But what I want to do now is give you an indication of how the app can be accessed, and it can actually be accessed in one of 3 ways. Firstly, individuals can purchase it themselves for their own CPD through the App Store at a price of £6.99. So that's less than the price of a textbook and the price, or less than the price of a couple of pints. Secondly, rather than individual purchase, the app can be bought in bulk directly from us through a licensing agreement. So effectively, organisations can come to us and buy in bulk for their staff and receive a discount for doing so. The process is really simple, so if you're interested, get in touch. We'll send you the information with all the details, and once you decide how many licenses you would like, you basically just inform us and we draw up an agreement and an invoice. Once the agreement and the invoice are both signed and settled, we receive email addresses from you, and then we set up all users and send them an email with their own personal unique details. And it really is that simple. We've been doing this since September last year, and we've got a number of licenses currently running, and it's very quick and very efficient. And thirdly, the last way that we can access the app is through a white labeling. So we can white label the app to suit individual organizational needs. Within this, what we're looking at doing is adding things such as force logos. So we can add the logo, we can remove all the other content. So we'll be keeping only the police section and put in there information that you want. And we can add things that may be of importance to your organisation. So some examples can be seen on the screen there in that phone on the right-hand side. Things such as important contacts, ongoing force operations, any force policies or ISO standards, etc. Really is anything that you would like and that would be important to you. There are lots of ways that we could look at white labelling it, but the one thing that we would do is work with you to ensure that the end product is appropriate for your organisational needs. Regardless of which option might be right for you, we're here to assist every step of the way. There'll only ever be a one-off fee and there'll never be any hidden costs. So if you'd like to know more or have a chat with us, don't hesitate to get in touch. But just before we finish this morning and go to the Q&A, I just wanted to share with you our plans moving forward. So we've been listening to the feedback from our users since launch, and we do take it very seriously. We want to continually improve the app. So we have some updates coming soon. There's actually going to be a big change in the police section as we're adding even more information into the sexual offences section, which we feel is going to be of significant importance and really help. We're also in the midst of developing specialist add-ons where we're going to be looking at subject-specific material. So we'll be dealing with things such as firearms, CBRN attacks, terrorist incidents, mass fatality incidents, amongst a few of the ones that we're currently developing. There's obviously the white labelling, as I've just been talking about on the previous slide. And in addition, we're also currently developing some online training modules, and the online training will build upon and support the content in the app and vice versa. So there's a lot to look forward to and a lot coming up. So I think that's enough information from us. We've hit you with quite a lot of information. We hope that you enjoyed the presentation. So I'd like to say thank you for listening, and we're now happy to take any questions. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen there, put the video on. Good morning. Just checking the chat here. See, there's quite a few messages in the chat.
So we have a question there from Rachel Upton asking if licenses are just for 1 year. No, they're not for the police licensing. They'll be for the lifetime of the person working for the police force. So it's not just an annual license.
Got a question here saying, can the app be personalised for the individual so that police staff are only presented as the police screen, their initial landing screen? I think that's what we were talking about with regards to the white labelling. We will work with an organisation to remove all the other content, so it will just be the police information in there and anything else that the organisation would like in there. So in terms of the licensing aspect, if organisations license at the moment, that would be the app as it is with all the content as it is. But with regards to white labelling, the content would be removed and it would be personalised to the organisation.
Wow.
So there's a question on there saying, does knowing an individual has been arrested prior to going to a scene risk importing bias?
I have answered that one. I don't think it's came across and given you the answer, but I have responded to that one to David individually. If anybody else was interested, my answer to David was when we put that in, we were more so thinking about as a scene investigator, it's really relevant to help you with your examination. So something that you mightn't do as standard. So for example, fibre tapings, we wouldn't do them at all volume crime scenes. And for example, theft of motor vehicle, it's not done as just a standard thing. However, if we realise that someone had been arrested not long after the incident, then that's something that we consider. So it's just so that the CSI can consider what could be relevant to the investigation and not. So they wouldn't know the identity of the person or anything like that. It's more so just to make us have an informed decision about how we examine things. You can see there's a question from Rachel there asking about the white labelling and asking if that's a chargeable service. Yes, that would be. So that wouldn't be a standard price like we have with the licensing. That would be a discussion we'd have to have and see exactly what it is that you want within the app. And then a price would be made from that, depending on what functionality is needed, etc. in there.
Fantastic. Do we have any more questions?
If anybody does think of anything after this, we're more than happy for you to drop us an email and we can always follow up afterwards if you think of something once we've gone.
Hi, David. David's asking there if there's a quick demo of the fireside possible. We can give you a demo of the fireside, David. That'd be no problem at all. Can't do it in this meeting because I don't know how to hook kind of the phone up through this screen right now. If you would like to drop us an email, David, and then what we'll do is we'll arrange to have a chat, or we can perhaps send you a code so you can take a look at the app and the fireside. That'd be okay.
I can see we've got another question there from Rachel asking if the app has a note section. It doesn't currently, but it is something that we've considered for when police forces take a licence on board. Currently, the version that's out on the App Store, it's for people's personal devices. So we didn't want anybody to be storing any sensitive data on their personal phones. So currently we haven't added a note section in there, but it is definitely something we're considering for when it's going to be on work devices.
Hi, Susie. Susie just dropped a question in the chat there. Excellent app. I think it would be great benefit for first attending officers. Thank you. That's our hope too. Does your app take into account current ISO legislation for examination of scenes? When we started developing the app, it was prior to the ISO legislation being put in place for crime scene examiners. And what we've done with the information, Susie, is take it right back to basics for the first officers attending, and in the hope that if we can get the basics right from the offset, that's then going to help the crime scene investigator. Obviously, the scene investigators are currently only just going through the ISO legislation, and the police officers themselves are not as yet. So our hope is that at least getting the basics in place is going to be of great benefit for them. But because the information is that basic crime scene step-by-step process, really it should fall in line with a lot of the ISO guidance, to be honest with you, because it is the methodical process that we go through as scene investigators. Just to add on to that is that we know that a lot of forces are developing their own ISO legislation, so it's not actually nationally standardized at the moment. Each force has developed their own. So in terms of white labeling, that's one of the things that we could look at is putting the force ISO standards into that app, so it's there again on the phone, which would be a great help.
We have a question from Rachel asking, how often is the content reviewed to ensure it's up to date with current guidance and standards? As Ange said before, we've got some big updates coming through very soon, which is taken into account, everything like that. But to be honest, a lot of it, as Ange said, is kind of the basics of approach and things like that. So not much of that really will change, but it definitely is something that we're going to be keeping an eye on. And that if there is any big changes with any of that, we will be making updates as and when that's necessary.
Yeah, and within that as well, like I say, we are listening to our users. So from the feedback that we've been getting, when people are coming to us with ideas of maybe how information should be presented, or how things may have changed slightly. We are taking that on board and also using user feedback to adapt and update. So it will be at regular intervals. Do we have any more questions before we finish the session? We've got one there. Is your app currently utilised by UK police forces? We only launched the app in June last year, and then we very quickly followed that up with the licensed version of the app. So there's been a lot of work ongoing, like I say, work on the app updates. And since that launch, we have actually been communicating with 7 different police forces. I'm sure you guys all know what it's like in the police in getting things moving and red tape. So we are actually currently in conversation with a number of different police forces in the UK, and we're hoping that it's going to go out shortly to the first couple, fingers crossed, and then hopefully everyone else will follow thereafter.
I think that's about it on the questions at the moment.
So really like to thank you again for coming along and attending today. We really appreciate it. If any of you do have any questions, or if anybody would like to arrange a chat with us or a discussion about any of this content or anything to do with the app at all, please don't hesitate to get in touch, and we'd happily arrange a Zoom or a virtual coffee with you and have a chat about the things that have been discussed and the app. So I'd like to say thank you very much again on behalf of both of us.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.